Well, we're just getting ready to get started, and Barrett, great to see you guys. And yeah, we're just getting ready to get started. So I think everybody, I know most of the people in the room so far. And my name is Michael Davis, and we're celebrating our 63rd anniversary. So sometimes I have to look because we've had so many of them. You just see I have a whole section in my closet of these shirts going back from 40 to I don't know how long, but I've now owned the company now for 27 years. Right here in Nashville. I'm very proud to still be here, and we're actually thriving through this pandemic like hopefully most of the laundry owners are and what have you. And we are just, proud to be where we are in this point in time. I tell you, I've never had so much appreciation for the laundry industry as I've had this past 18 months. I tell you, it's been, I've always been in the business and always liked the business and enjoyed it, but this past 18 months made me really appreciate what my father started and what we're all here, all doing together is mainly owning laundries and supplying you guys with equipment and supplies and what have you. And it's an absolute pleasure to see everybody, well, not everybody, a lot of good customers and all my employees and everybody else live and in person, because we haven't done this in obviously quite some time. I guess it was October of 2019, the last time we had an in-person meeting. And it's amazing that we've had about 18 months of a unbelievable changing world where, but the laundry industry thrived right through it. I'll tell you this much, there's more activity in the laundry business than there's ever been. And I'm not sure what the reasons are. I think some of it's part of, the corporate America people decided, hey, when they started working from home, hey, this is better than going to the office every day. But there's more investors and more people looking to invest in this industry than we've ever seen in the history. It's not just us, it's across the country. The manufacturers, some of our competitors can't even get equipment out until the end of the year next year. Luckily, we still have the ability to get our equipment out in, a few weeks and what have you for most of our equipment. So luckily, Speed Queen has been very strong through this entire pandemic, and we're really looking forward to a nice day with you guys today. I'm sure some more people will show up this afternoon, but we're going to get started here shortly. I think a lot of you guys know Mickey Forche back here. He's been our service installation manager for a long time, and lucky to have Mickey on board as we have for all these years. How many years has it been?
19 now.
19 years.
20, yeah.
Wow. Well, congratulations. And we have a lot of other long-term employees as well that we'll talk, introduce later. But anyway, again, we're just going to get started, and we're going to start with Joe Stone to give us some training on our products on service and what have you, and what you need to maintain your equipment. Joe's been doing this with us for many, many years now. It's great to have him back, and we'll introduce everybody else a little bit later when we get more people here, but thank you for coming, and we look forward to having you here. And anything you need, just let us know, but we'll have food and drinks for you all day. And if you need any water, hopefully it's not near as hot as it was yesterday. The humidity's down a little bit, so hopefully we'll be a little better off. But anyway, enjoy your day. If you have any questions or need anything from me, I'm here all day and love to be here and answer anything you need. Joe, go right ahead. Thank you.
Thanks Laundry now for 30 plus years. So I've been doing this for a while. We're going to start with the top loader. And just so you know, this is very informal. If you have a question, feel free to ask anytime. I'd rather you ask while it's fresh in your head than to forget it. All right, you want to pull this one out? Yeah, he did give you the short one, didn't he? You can do it right there. You want to tilt that back a little bit? That's good enough. All right, we'll start with some basic things on the top load washer. Number one, when they load these machines, they're not supposed to fill it above the agitator. Okay, anything above that is what we call overloading, and this is going to wear on bearings, belts, pulleys. It's going to lessen the life. Now, top loaders are pretty heavy-duty machines. They handle a lot of abuse. Overloading is probably the one that hurts it the most. So if you could get people to load them right, then you'll have less problems with wear and tear. We're going to start with basic stuff. Let's say the water valve, water hose. That hose right over there, and grab that screen. Okay, so with the water, you have whether it's not filling or it's filling all the time. If it's filling all the time, then you're going to check your water valve. Most likely it's stuck open. So you got to turn the water off, replace the valve. If you're not getting water in, can I just see the black one? That filter. Yep. What we have is we have two filters. On the water valve itself, there's a filter in there that you can use a screwdriver and bring out and clean off. You're looking for water sediment. And where the water line connects, you'll have another screen there. So there's two screens, and this is if you have slow fill or no fill. We can leave them up there for now. The next, probably the pump. Probably most common thing you'll get is the pump. Things will get caught in it. As you can see, you open up the front, it's accessible to the water or the drain lines where you can open that up. Usually you'll see stuff in there. Now, I also tell people take a little flashlight, kind of look in there. It's an impeller. Make sure those teeth aren't all broken off, because if they are, it won't pump well. It's a mechanical pump. So when it goes in one direction, it's keeping water in. Goes the other direction, it's pumping water out. It's a pretty simple pump. And of course, this is our older pulley, which was all plastic. If you look at the one that's down here, it'll be a metal pulley, but it does still have the plastic insert. And the reason is, that is where our fail point is. Between this, the pump, and the belt, this is where we want it to fail. When people overload it a lot, if it's going to fail, this is where we want it. And this is the telltale sign. When you have these belts burnt up, pulleys burnt up, the helix, two plastic pieces that go here, you know, when you hear them, what we call machine gun, that's usually because these have worn down. That's all overloading. But we leave it so right in this area, you can repair all that. And when we talk about parts, this is probably, if you have top loaders, this is your most important part, which is the belt. You can't just go to AutoZone and buy a belt. You want to get this from Star because it's designed to slip. Most belts aren't designed for that. So if you just take the same size belt and put it back on your machine, what you're going to end up losing is a transmission, which is a lot more work and a lot more expensive. Probably the most common things you're going to run into is right there, the pump, the water valve, opening. Before I go too far, how many people have top loaders? You look down. Don't. It's okay. Yeah, top loaders, one of the things we run into is the amount of water being used. And that goes back to regulations. Government regulations is the only reason that you see less and less water, and that's why you won't get a true hot wash. If you try a hot wash on here, it's like 15 seconds of hot water, and that's it.
Can you turn that off on the new machine?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's just DOE requirement for, it has to leave the factory like that. As long as you don't have government rebates and stuff for your machines and all that, you can turn that off. What's really nice about it is basically we got two screws down here, two on the lid and then two inside the box. and we can open this whole thing up and easily work on it. We used to have a lot more room underneath where you could do a motor replacement, everything from underneath. But our tub got longer because we needed more area to make the DOE settings for water. So we now have the long tub, and we eliminated about 6 inches of workspace below. So it's a little bit tighter. You can still get to the pump, the belt, the pulleys. It's just a tight fit. Anytime you're working on it, if you open up this front, you can do the screws too, flip this up. You can push back on that whole module and kind of lean it over to get in there and to work on it. We'll go ahead and open it up real quick. I'll keep talking if you want to get those. Those are already out. It's just the two in the front. Now the only big changes that we've made to a top loader, if you look at it mechanically speaking, it's the same machine as almost 20 years ago. As far as the transmission, we haven't changed. The motor, we haven't changed. The pump, yeah, everything works the same way. So if you worked on an old machine, you can work on a new machine. The biggest changes that ever happened to it were the electrically. We now have an output board on the bottom left, and then up top is just the control, and that's low voltage. It's usually just DC voltage up top. Right here you have the lid switch, which basically as you open and close the lid, you should hear that switch go. I believe it will still come up as lid if that's not working or if it's not closing. We have seen it, where this is what makes that lid switch. We've seen this bent out where it misses it, so it has to be readjusted. That's probably the most common thing on there, is if that thing gets out of balance and this tub gets enough shaking going, it will bend it, and then your lid switch won't be making anymore. Your water valve, the pressure sensor switched to what we call an electronic transducer. So that just makes it easier. It's the same thing used on all the other washers, just to go across the board, versus the old style you would have had a mechanical switch. So basically as it hit a level, it was done. This does it electronically, but works the same way. We don't run into too many water ones, right? No. All right. The other thing is your springs. Basically, that's all that's holding that module in place. So once those springs are removed, this whole module comes out, which makes it a whole lot easier to work on, especially if you're doing something in the top, you're doing bearings or anything like that. Other than the pump and the water valve, I don't have a whole lot of things go wrong with these. You guys that have them, is there anything that you see? Any issues that you have? Nope. Dang, that's good. We really haven't, other than electronically. The controls have changed. We separated. Oh, the question was, when's the last time we changed these machines? Which is just, like I said, it's only been electronics. Water valves have changed maybe here and there, but mechanically speaking, from top to bottom, it's the same machine as 20 years ago.
Didn't you go to a deeper tub?
This tub is deeper, but all our mechanical stuff underneath is the same. So when we went to the deeper tub, that's where we lost 6 inches underneath, where we used to be able to work on everything from underneath.
What year was that changed?
The year it was changed, deeper tub definitely went in 2015 across the board. I'm trying to think, 2007, I think you still had an option between short and tall tub.
2007.
Yeah, 2007. So if you have anything prior to 2007, like I said, they had tall tub and short tub options. But the only thing you see now is the tall tub. And again, that's because of DOE. We needed the area. Some of the competitors, they took those agitators out and put those little blower fins down. That gave them more area. We didn't want to get rid of our agitator. Any other questions on top load washers?
Are they all spray rinse?
Huh? Yeah. The question is how the machines come. The machines come, and that started in 2015 easily. Spray rinse, and then there's a temperature regulation on them. Now, again, that spray rinse can be turned off. The spray rinse does work. It works really well. The only problem is you can't use fabric softener. Now, some people don't like that. But it does use a third of the water.
There's no sign on there that says don't use fabric softener, is there? A sign on your machine?
No, there's no sign that states fabric softener is not, it doesn't say it on there, which is a good point.
On an unattended store, that would be helpful.
Yes, on an unattended store, they should have some. You know what? No one's ever brought up that question. That's a good one, actually. Yeah, since we have a spray rinse and you can't use fabric softener, we should advertise that. And I'll throw that one back to engineering just to check.
We'll write that down then. Don't forget it.
Oh, it's being recorded. Now you can hold me to it. Anything else on top load washers? We're seeing less and less in coin-operated stores of top loaders just because of the amount of energy they use and water, which I don't mind. And we're going to leave this open if you wanted to come up a little bit later and look in there deeper. Do you guys have top loaders? Yeah, all right. Okay, next thing we're going to talk about is the front load washer. Okay, so it was basically designed to take the place of top loaders. So its footprint fit right in there with a top loader. But when it first came out, you know, we had to deal with people that were used to top loaders and packing it in there, you know, and the front loader didn't work as well because it's basically what we call a soft mount. So there's shocks on the machine. Good? All right. So there's shocks on the machine, and the biggest thing that this unit had trouble doing was the little half loads of clothes, because for a soft mount, it's harder to balance less clothes. So again, probably around the 2015 era, 2013, 2015, we looked at it a lot closer and we did some design changes that really eliminated most of the issues that a front load washer would have. The big thing we did is if you ever sit here and turn your basket, if you have a new one, you'll hear the clinking. And what that is that's a balance ring that's on the front and the back of the tub. That balance ring has a liquid with ball bearings in it. And what that does for us is if I only put a half a load in there, when it tries to balance the load, the ball bearings can work their way to the other side and allow it to be a balanced load. So now we didn't have the machine shaking, the shocks going, and all the other stuff that was happening with the front loader. So that really took out the balance issue and the ability for people to just put a half a load in the machine and it still spin out.
When did that happen?
That, again, around the 2015 area. That's where we did the big design changes on this and the top loader. So the other thing you got to remember about this, yes, this is a plastic door. It's a plastic door lock. It's not it's not set up for the abuse. I mean, if you got a store where they don't treat the machines well, it could give you problems. It could be issues. And some people have asked why we don't use a metal door. And again, the difference is like $250 versus $40. You know, a lot of people won't pay another $200 for this machine to have a metal door, because then we're just getting into a cabinet washer. So it's the biggest reason it doesn't have it. The other thing we did is, for some reason, when they first designed this, we have a pump and there's a clean out, but the clean out was facing the back of the machine where you couldn't get in. So they did turn it around so you could open up the front and the pump is facing you. With that pump, there's a little clean out. Of course, you got to be prepared for some water to come out, because it, just like any pump, it holds water inside there. I can tell you this pump has been pretty solid, but in the coin side, when you have a vended side, the suds are tough on pumps. So you can get suds lock and such. Around 2017, on our programming, we came up with a way of testing for suds lock. So at the end of the cycle, if it thinks there's suds lock in here, it will run another rinse cycle, basically, to flush out the suds so that it can go into the spin. Even though this soap tray, there's some more parts in that bag, just so you know. The blue bag. Yeah. Yeah, the soap tray is small. And people will try and fill the whole thing up with liquid detergent and stuff. I mean, we have a problem that people have to see bubbles to think it's cleaning. And it's really not. Usually the cheapest soaps you can find have the most bubbles, because it's the illusion of cleaning. And it's really hard for people to start using this HE detergent and stuff like that, because they just don't see the bubbles like they used to. And you know, it's going to be a never-ending battle. It's worse on cabinet washers because they can just keep filling. There's nothing to stop them from putting the whole thing in there. So whenever you walk into your store and you see white across here, it might be worth a little lesson to them, but all that soap is going to be in their clothes. I mean, you're not going to get it all rinsed out on a basic cycle. So, you know, when it dries, it's going to have that in there, and they're going to have the reactions to it. So, again, I know I can sit there all day and talk about soap, because it's probably one of our biggest things with washers, that it causes the issues that it does. All right, so again, we were talking about the door lock. It's a basic door lock like your home washers. You have the teeth on the door. Again, there's two screws right here that hold this on. Okay? When they go into the slot, they push this over, which makes the switch, and it's a basic door lock. You have two switches. You got one when the door closes, it pushes that plunger. So that tells the machine the door is closed. So if you get the error up there, closed door, that's what you're looking for. And then of course, when this shoots over, it's going to hit the second switch, which tells it it's locked. So most door locks are basically that. Something's going to tell it that it's closed, and then after you start the machine, something's going to tell it that it's locked. So there's usually a minimum of two switches. The water valve, it's changed a few times on this machine, but it's basically a log valve. So basically you got hot and cold, and then whichever compartment it's going to flush will activate these two coils. Works the same way. Now what I like better about this valve is, we talked about the filters. These are little plastic filters. You just grab a pair of needle nose, you can pull them out, clean them easily, and put them back in. And as far as water sediment building up in there, you'll get the feel for your store, how bad the water is, you know, and how often you need to do that. But I always tell anybody in a new store to check it at least yearly, just to see how that's going. And you got to remember, most hoses for these machines are only rated for 5 years. So after 5 years, you should be checking your hoses and thinking about changing them. Just because either one works. What ends up happening is where these are crimped is easy for it, especially if a machine moves a lot. If that machine, on top loaders, if you got one that shakes a lot or anything like that, it's going to wear out. And they say start checking these after 5 years, just because when these fail, that's water going all over your store. You don't want that. So it's worth keeping an eye on. Now there is another thing, going back to the drainage. You have the option of having a gravity drain with this instead of a pump. Now although this pump, like I said, it does well, but that's your drain valve basically, versus putting a 2-inch drain valve that just dumps. And where that helps us, just give me a 2-inch. Yeah, that one's, we'll go further into this one, but so that's your comparison in draining. Number one, it gets the water out faster. Number two, where it's very helpful is if my water valve fails and water's going into that unit and nobody's there, your water is going to keep filling until it comes out this door. So you're going to have water everywhere. If you have a gravity drain, that water is just going straight out. At least you don't have the mess all over in the store. You still lose the amount of water, but this keeps the water going out. Plus, like I said, the drain times are faster. If you think about all the stuff you find inside your drains, your troughs, and imagine it going through this hole versus this one, you see what's going to get clogged up a little bit more often, and that's this one. Yeah. All right, so those are your main things. One thing we didn't go into was the coin drops. It doesn't happen as much on the washers as much as a tumbler, and that's lint can build up in there. You can get crud in there, and how to clean them. On those coin drops, there is a slot on top that you can slide off, and we'll have this one open so you can see it closer. When you pull that off, you can open it up. You can clear your coin jams, or if there's a bunch of muck in there, you can clean it out. It makes it easier. Most of them, once you open up the top, you can get to. Top loaders, that's a little bit harder. You do got to take it out of the slot and remove the coin drop to get to it. Like I said, we'll allow you to look at that closer. Now the next thing on a front loader that you probably want to be familiar with is, of course, this is the new setup. If you have front loaders, when you look at that bottom section there, you'll find the inverter or the drive board. That's basically your input-output board, like we talked about on the top loader. This is low voltage, DC usually, and on all your high voltage is on the bottom input-output board. It's also called the motor control board because it's connected to the motor. It basically does all the things there. So they moved it now. If you look, it's basically, it looks just like the other board except for it has a cover built for it and it's moved up to the side. But you can still get to it with one screw in the front and then it slides out. If you have front loaders and you're looking at getting new front loaders, you might want to take a little bit closer look at this because these are some of the changes that happened in 2021. Okay, who has front loaders? So you got them both. All right, questions on front load washers?
The water valves.
Yeah.
The yellow versus the white.
Those are just two different manufacturers. One is made by LB, the other is Robert Shaw. I think it's Robert Shaw.
Is it okay to use?
You can use either one. Actually, I'm going to be, I mean, everybody knows about some of the part issues getting from manufacturers, you know, like Ford has a lot filled with trucks that need computers. We ran with that on some of the water valves. We couldn't get enough from LB, so we had to go back to the, we've used both in the past, but we had to go back to them and get some from them because we had to keep production going. Usually if you find two different parts, like you got a machine and you got two different parts in there, either one is made to work with it. It's just two different manufacturers, and that's why they're different colors. It's so that you know which one's which.
Is that unit still all on the shocks and everything?
Is the unit on the shocks? Yes. Same shocks. I tell you what they did do is they actually changed the orientation. You might look on some of your older machines and the spring might be down, and I think this is the second time they did that. They switched back again. But so the orientation is the only thing that has changed on the shocks. So it's whether the spring is down or up. And again, when you're looking at shocks, it's best to replace all four. If you're going to replace one, the amount of work it takes to replace one, you might as well do all four. Because unfortunately, the shocks are screwed from below the machine. So you got to get the nuts off of there and then replace the shocks and set it back on there and tighten those nuts up. The gasket, basically, you know, when you deal with a lot of overloading, you'll see this wear a lot quicker. On the rubber gasket, you'll see the wear marks come up and such. This particular gasket is pretty easy. It's got a clamp on the inside and a spring. I'm going to grab that spring real quick. Okay, so it's just a little spring that holds it in to this lip on the front panel. Again, if you're replacing a door lock, that's how easy you can get to the door lock. If you pull that back, you'll be able to undo these two screws, pull this up, unplug the harness to replace a door lock easily. The gasket itself is on a clamp around the front cover plate. So it's just a clamp holding it on there. It's real easy to change if you run into those. The biggest problem you don't want there is it wearing enough through where it's leaking water out. And that's what you'll usually find when these are bad is you'll start getting water down here. And the reason you're getting water is it's actually dripping in here, but there's holes in that base. So it'll go out on the floor as you see it.
That inverter high enough to clear all that?
Is that what?
Inverter high enough and far enough back to clear the water with?
And prior to 2021, that inverter is right on the bottom. It was high enough. Yes, I very rarely, I don't think, other than a store flooding, I've never had an inverter go bad because of it getting wet. Only problems I've ever had with the inverters had to do with components that caused erroneous errors. So they would get updated and then we would replace them out and you didn't have the issue anymore. But now on the new design, they even took it a step further. Now it's mounted up on the side wall almost. Which, like I said, when you guys get a chance, you can take a look at that. If you're looking at new ones, this is what it's going to look like compared to your old one. So again, the only thing that will look different, and the biggest reason you'll know, is this control right here. You'll notice that the control, it was all white lettering versus this is off, so versus the standard green. So that's one way you know you're looking at the new style. Unfortunately, with COVID, we have the same problem with chips, getting all our microchips in. So that was going to go to here, but they're holding off on that until we can get by the little chip crisis, because you got to get enough stuff for production and to keep it going. But we're working with that one. Again, since 2015, the meat of this machine has not changed. It's the same machine. The only thing that has changed is electronics. It uses the same transducer as the top loader and the front load washers, but on this unit, now we'll give you the option of getting some different levels. On the top loader, you can't program any water levels other than to turn off the water saver. This is just a little closer look at a transducer. Basically, it's a DC component. So it connects directly to the front end control, and then it will have a hose coming off here, just like the mechanical ones did, except for this can give me a lot more water levels versus a mechanical one, which usually was stuck around 2 or 3, depending on the one it was. I want to open that lid up. I got this part. I want to see what. There you go. What is that? 516, right?
Close.
Huh?
It's close.
It's close. Yeah, you got to get your right angle. There. Now, one of the things we did also, and like I said, when this first came out, it was made just like that top load washer. So one of the things you know about a top load washer is when you get behind the machine, you can't take that back panel off. And that's the way this started. Of course, once we made all of our changes, one of the things we did is to make the back so it comes off, which makes it easier to get to the belt. The water valve itself, there is a cutout panel that you can take off to make it easier to pull the water valve off from the back. Usually, from the top, they'll tell you you can do different things, but I do everything from the back just because. Number one, it's easy enough to usually slide the front loaders out, like if you need more room to work, versus the other. All right, so this is on the coin drop. This is what we're talking about. Basically, on top, there's a slide. When you slide it off, you can take this side piece off. Usually that's where your coin jams will be. Or if you got like a clump of lint that's not allowing the coins to drop, this is where you can clean it out. I always tell everybody, vacuum it, don't use air and blow it everywhere, because you're just going to blow the lint somewhere else. And then that'll be a problem later. Always vacuum lint.
Let me ask you a question on that. Mine, I got one that jams, and I know what happens. People just start shoving quarters in, didn't give them a time to drop in the drop box. and now quarters won't have register in there at all. They keep feeding.
So they put so many quarters into the coin drop that it's not registering at all?
I wasn't there when it happened. I take it they just dropped the first couple quarters, and to get the rest low, they just kept dropping and shoving them in, and it voted out. They didn't give it time to register. You know, they had.
Yeah, it's tight. All right, so basically if you clean a jam and it keeps getting jammed again, what you want to do is you're now at the point where you got to replace the coin drop, because that coin drop it means something in there. Usually a jam can happen. Usually it's a little bit of lint just to jam it up. But once I clean out a jam, that should move smoothly again. If it doesn't, if it jams up again over and over, you're going to have to, it's in the coin drop now.
Yeah, I've noticed a lot of customers will have tricycle warts in their hand, and they could have a phone in their hand, they'll just start dropping quarters in. Don't even give them a chance to register. It happens on all of them, you know.
Yeah, if you shove them in, if you shove any coins in too fast, you can. I mean, that's usually how we try and create our own jams in the test lab. Is you flip them down there quick because they're spinning, and you let the other one catch up to it basically, and they lock in, and that's how you can cause a jam. But like I said, if you get a jam over and over, you got to start looking at the coin drop itself. I'm just going to point this out just for anyone. Like I said, if you get a 2021 machine, you're going to have this new style control. There's also, we added this board in the rear is basically for card readers. You have a lot of different hookups and different things you can do with card readers. And the biggest problem we ever had was when we used transformers is sometimes, the card reader could blow our board. So we wanted a way of separating it. So it gets to connect to here, and that way it can't affect the other board if there's an issue with the card reader. But it also makes, installing the card readers and everything else a lot easier, wiring-wise and everything. And of course, all the controls, oops. You didn't need those, right? Well, now had these little antennas on them, and that's just to make networking easier for those that network. There's that one. All right, so it makes it easier to network, easier to connect in, and just briefly speaking about this new control, again, this is just on small chassis, which is what we're talking about here, and the top loader. It uses what we call NFC communication, whereas the old stuff uses IR. I don't know if any of you use your IRs for pulling the information off the machines. This one uses NFC, which basically is like on a Samsung phone, you have an NFC connection. So we now have apps to program pricing and do different things that you can use your phone for. That's the future. That's where we're heading towards. Like I said, COVID kind of threw a little monkey wrench in it. But it's definitely something you'll see in the next couple of years across the board on here. Questions on front load washers? Issues, problems? Anything I missed that you wanted to know more about?
Plastic doors are terrible.
Yeah, like I explained about.
Customers lean on them all the time.
The question was on plastic doors, or the statement more was on plastic doors. Yeah, we've done a lot of things to better support this machine. Number one is we changed this design. Basically, if you look at this gray material here, that was the whole design of the door. So the door kind of came out and then went around, which, like you got a door here, people are going to lay clothes on it, they're going to lean on it. So it would end up basically cracking right in here. So we changed the mold of the outside, which actually made it stronger. We also haven't, for places, we don't put it on all the machines, but for places that have issues with these doors breaking, which means they got some rough customers, there is a metal piece that can go in between the two to give it even more support. But yes, you're never going to be able to lean on this door.
The corner where it goes, like a circle, right there, where they crack down.
Yeah.
Oh well.
The funny thing is, I mean, yeah, these doors on a plastic door, you lean on it, you hang on it, it's going to crack it. Even your metal doors on our washers, cabinet washers, if you do too much of that, they are stronger. But then what that's going to do is this door is going to start sagging down, which means when I go to close it and I try and start the machine, I'll hear that click, click, click. Why? Because now the door doesn't line up with the door lock and you're going to get an error. So that one's fixable, easy, not as easy as plastic, but you know, you got to look where you put these. I mean, yeah, they're not gonna. I always tell everybody they're not gonna hold up in a place where they're rough on machines.
Where's a place where they're not rough on machines?
certain locations. I know it's hard to believe, but you know, some people have stores where people don't treat the machines badly. I think they're in the Northeast. yeah, but you're going to have a certain amount of abuse, but then you have you have a next level abuse. I mean, anyone who would go into a place and rip your doors off, that's going to be a rough place. Yeah, this is where you have to make the decision. I mean, we call this a 22.5 pounder now? You know, versus a 20-pound cabinet washer. You know, depending on, I know the price difference is way off, but if I have a store and I'm doing too much of that repairing because they're rough, I'm going with cabinet washers because they're built for that. You know, they're built for laundromats.
We've got some of these 5 years old and never replaced them.
See, she has 5-year-old machines and they never replaced the door. There are locations out there.
I'm not a fan of these, I'll be honest with you. Had to have them.
Yeah, I know. I was
We
like,
got everything, we got all these sizes, but we never had a problem.
you've never had a problem with them. Why are you not?
Minor problems, but we never had a door broke.
Why are you not a fan?
Of these,
Yeah.
they're just harder to clean inside.
Oh, okay.
That's
So the
the
front
only thing.
front loads are a little bit different as far as cleaning up versus top loaders.
One door lock in 5 years.
So you have some good customers.
We do.
So why would you come from the Northeast down here to this?
That could have been the Northeast of Tennessee I was talking about.
Northwest.
Northwest. There we go. But yeah, there are stores out there where they're not as rough. I mean, I even have some of these machines before we made all the changes to help the balancing and everything else. So they have these old machines and they've never had issues. You know, the thing about issues, sometimes it's hard to really tell if it's an issue or if it's environment. And we can get machines out there and then all of a sudden, you know, people are complaining about stuff, but we gotta kind of look at it as a whole when we say, is this an issue or not? But any product out there, even the worst product in the world, somebody had good luck with at some point.
I keep doors in stock.
The plastic doors, he keeps the plastic doors in stock. Well, do you replace the whole door?
The ones, they're white. They look that size with the white front.
And it goes this way and out instead of this angle. Yeah, see, that's where it started, was your door. Then they went with this cover, which did give it a lot more support. But it's still a plastic door, so anybody can lean on it and break it. You know? Even somebody as light as Mickey. Right?
Right over time, just
I had a 65-year-old woman who ripped the door right off.
Well, that doesn't surprise me. Okay.
Cameras help.
We talked about the different NSC communication, and I don't know, like I said, I don't know how many of you guys use the software or the IR devices, but it would change with these. This is what we call a dongle, and it does the NFC communication. But the object is not to use this, it's to use your cell phone. Yeah, put that up before you lose it. Anything else on front load washers? So door seems to be your biggest problem. That's not bad. I'll take that one.
Does that new machine have the big yucky gasket inside that gets all full of crud?
Does the new machine have the big yucky gasket? Yes. It is a front load washer, which means you have to have a gasket connecting the two. So at the bottom here, which they have changed this design a lot. I think on the other ones there was holes here. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, we tried to change the design, but guess what? That is where all the crud is going to end up at. Well, not all of it. Some of it gets by, but that is a collection point, so that's something that you have to clean daily. And that won't change. It's the same style. Yeah, you see how they changed it there? Yeah, they changed the holes on the front and everything to try and drain more of that off. But it is a collection point still. I would never say it's better. Now you guys got a gravity drain or pump? They're pumps. Pumps?
I have pumps on those.
All right. Good. All right.
Does everybody have trouble with underwire, brawl wires, with the gravity pump?
If you have a laundry with washers that have drains, you know brawl wires, credit cards, rings, you find everything. It's crazy what gets by the machine and ends up in your drain. The worst part is the brawl wires cause the most damage, you know, as far as tearing up the seals and such. Which yeah, that's a the good thing is on the cabinet washers, as we get to talk about them, is we did try and make that a little bit better. On the drain valve, the seal can be replaced versus the whole drain valve, and that is mainly because brawl wires cutting into the seal and then allowing water to leak by. I mean, there's nothing really that washing manufacturers can do to prevent brawl wires. You know, or like I said, it's sometimes you look at some of the stuff you get in the drain and you say, how did it make it by that little gap? Well, that's that G-force when those things are spinning, and they're getting higher and higher, you know. I mean, when you get 200 Gs, you know, you can force some things around metal into your drain. So they all go around. We're gonna, where are we at, 10? Do you want to see if they wanted to do any of their giveaways? Usually they break into here. And it gives us a chance to kind of push back and get the next section going. Any questions on small chassis, what we call small chassis?
You said you could get over your phone and like change the price and stuff like that. How would that work? Just through Bluetooth, or would you have to get like an app or something?
His question was about the app for the new style. It's just on the new style. Basically, you would have an app that you can download from the Play Store. And all you need is the app and NFC. It doesn't have to be connected to Bluetooth. It uses NFC, which again, now here goes your drawback is everything we do is Windows-based or Samsung. Yeah, Android, that's all we do. We don't mess with stuff because it just gets ickier.
Joe, I have noticed with that dongle, you have to have that on right next to it.
All right, his question on the dongle versus an IR is IR is usually you could sit out here and read them. Yes, with the dongle, it's almost right up against the machine. Same with the phone. I would put that phone right up on the control. And like I said, it uses NFC, which is something Android has used for a while. But it gives you at least the option. We can even run sometimes we have repairs. We could run them through the phone to update a control, which is really helpful for the service techs in the field that they could just use their phone. But again, since it's just Android, I know half the world's one and the other. So we do run into the guy with the iPhone says, why not me? I don't have that answer. I wasn't sure if you were going to do your regular things or if I needed to keep going on.
Well, no, we're done with the small chassis.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
No,
that's
I just thought I'd introduce the touch product for a lot of you that may have seen it online or somewhere, and some of you actually haven't.
We'll leave that unlocked.
But we've got about 4 or 5 stores now that are, well, probably more than that, but all new, brand new touch stores. So this is our new Speed Queen Touch product. And I know you've been sitting here looking at it, but it's the first in the industry to actually have a full touch screen. And so it gives you a lot of options. Everything is programmable. Everything can be modified on the fly, and everything can be adjusted, even online. So I can sit here and change my prices or change my cycles, everything while I'm sitting right here in my office. So the Speed Queen Touch system also now comes with its own payment system. So if you have a full new store of a Speed Queen product, you don't need credit card readers, all this different stuff. It's all built into the machine. So it's a different way of accepting money. You can use it as accepting quarters, as well as accepting the payment system, as well as accepting, you can use a credit card on the payment center, or you can use an app payment system, which is on your phone, which we've really just started getting into this app payment, but people are adapting to it better than we ever thought. Barrett has a full touch store, but you're not using the payment system, are you? You're using Setomatic still, which is what a lot of people have done just to be safe, to make sure that it worked real well. They add a credit card reader onto the machine itself. But these machines come with options where you can actually give the customer the option to rinse the machine before anything ever goes in it. So it's not on this screen right here, but there's another option where you hit rinse the machine. You can do it you put any price you want, but for a quarter, and it'll actually wash the machine out before you ever put anything in it. And so during COVID, that seemed to become a little bit more of what customers wanted. So everything's very adaptable. It also has settings for a deep clean cycle. So you can charge more, you can give an extra pre-wash, an extra rinse, and you can charge more for that. It also comes with an option to do what's called a quick wash. And that could be one fill for wash, hey Roger, and one fill for rinse, and that's it. And to me, I would never want to do that because to me, you're never gonna get the soap out of the clothes. But some of the younger people, and it could be called an eco wash for some of the younger people who want to save water and what have you. But we actually, and you would think you would charge less for that because you're using less water, but what we actually do is we charge more for that. Because it's convenience for getting people in and out of the store faster. They can have a 20-minute cycle versus 30-plus minute cycle. And it's great because it's actually saving you utilities and making more money for the laundry, but it's also getting that customer who wants to get in and out quicker or save water or what have you, energy. Gives them a lot of different options. So everything's programmable, everything can be changed, and it's a wonderful system that we're lucky to have. Like I said, nobody else has these, a touch screen on a machine yet. And Speed Queen's have spent many, many years. Don't break it. You break it, you pay for it. Just kidding. But Speed Queen spent a lot of money and a lot of years developing this system, and they didn't bring it out until it was right. And so now the system's been out for 2 years. So it's tried and true, and I have a lot of these machines in my own stores. I own 3 stores, if you don't know, and I bought 30 or 40 of these touch machines at the very beginning. And in the same store, if I have a 40-pound washer, that's what we call the gold model, which is our previous model, which we still have, and I have the same 40-pound washer sitting next to a touch machine, same size. I charge $1 more for that touch machine than I do the gold machine. Same size, same store, and they're using that gold machine $1 more, 2 to 1 over they're using the touch machine 2 to 1 over my gold machine, even though it's $1 more. So it's amazing what you can do with new and modern equipment. So we're going to move forward. I'm going to let Joe. I've just given you some of the reasons we have the touch product, and it's a differentiation from everybody in the industry. I don't know if other people are working on it or not, but we've had 2 years with nobody else coming out with the same product, and so it gives you a distinct competitive advantage for a store that's got. If you look at some of our competitors' machines, that's the same look for the last 15 years, and you walk into this store, it's a whole new animal. If you want to go see one of these stores with all this touch equipment with the Speed Queen Payment Center, there's one right back here on Murphy Road, which is less than a half mile from the office. And when you leave here today, you can run over there and take a look at it. It's a small store. It's a rehab we did. It was a 50-year-old store that was all broke down Dexter equipment. It was barely running, and we replaced all the equipment. And now it's doing gangbusters, and it's very small, it's very tight with parking and everything, but people love this system. And the owners, they're not here today, but they're older and they're really nice people. They're from from Nashville, but they're good old country boys. They have a lot of money, but they don't know anything about technology. But they bought this technology. They barely use the cell phone, but they bought this technology. Now they got their cell phone, getting their emails every day, tell them what the revenue is. You got an app on your phone which tells you how many turns you're doing and all these different things for your machines. They're super excited about it. And they said they didn't know anything about the payment system whatsoever, but they bought it because that's what we told them to buy. They said it's amazing how people have gravitated towards that payment system, even though it's an app payment system and what have you. It's not just pull a credit card out and swipe it, but they were impressed by how many, especially the younger people, which is a lot of the people that are in this area, at how much they're using that app payment system. So it's very... it's not necessarily new, but it's definitely the future. It's what's happening. It's current and future, but it's working really well. Joe, are you about ready? So Joe's going to get started and give you some more information on the front load washers. So these come in 20 pound, 30 pound, 40 pound, 60 pound, 80 pound, and 100 pound. So where the money is really coming from in laundries these days is 40 pound and up. You still need your smaller machines for the people who split the loads, maybe have a smaller white load or what have you. But with the revenue, I can show you on all my graphs and all my information, where the majority of my revenue comes from those 40-pound washers. And a good bit of it comes from the 60s and the 80s too. But the reality is we put more 40s in stores now than we ever did. Kind of got rid of the 30s because they don't bring in as much revenue as $1 per square foot. But those 40s are driving the stores and then going up from there. So if you don't have big machines in your store, you absolutely need them. And if you're ever building a new store, you really want to focus on going towards the larger machines because that's where the revenue is definitely being driven. And if you have a store with smaller equipment versus a new store, we just did this recently where we built a store across the street from a pretty good sized store, but it was all older, mostly smaller equipment. And the store we built, which Ron's store, a lot of big equipment, and it did gangbusters from the day it opened. They also have things that are, they have a mirror and they have a sink in their bathroom. Some places are just gotten so old and so bad, they don't even have a sink in their bathroom. If they have a toilet and toilet paper, you're lucky. But the new laundries are just night and day from what you used to see or what you still see in some of these older laundries. So, Joe, go right ahead.
All right, since he was talking about touch, I do want to kind of talk about a couple things about it. Because a lot of people look at it and say, this will get destroyed in my store. They'll just tear this up and everything. And I can say when we first tested this and it got a good year out there, we built 2 stores in Atlanta, not the best neighborhoods. And I think the one thing that surprised me the most was the way that people learned it. Swiping and everything, they picked it up real quick. It didn't take a whole lot. Yeah, it wasn't, they were both attended stores, so we did have to go with attended so that they were there to explain it to them. The other thing is people worry about damage. They're gonna bust this up. Well, the way this is made is this screen will come off. So if somebody scrapes it up with car keys, does whatever, unless you hit it with a hammer and crack that screen, the majority, this is safe. The computer is safe, and all you have to do is change a little screen. I think we did a few here, didn't we? And as far as use goes, like I said, people don't shy away from it. If they use cell phones, this is easy to pick up. And probably the best thing about this is, I don't know of any stores around here, but we had in the Northeast Wawas, where you go in, you make your hoagie. You just keep adding stuff, doing this, so there's 10 cents there, 20 cents there. It's just like that on this touch. There's so many things you can add to your wash that, you know, it's like a super menu. Some people get them and don't utilize them, but I don't see why you wouldn't. It's just something on the menu that they can pick. If you don't, you know, if they're not going to pick it, they're not going to pick it, but give them the opportunity. Sometimes they pay for extra hot water, cold water, whatever, or extra rinse, whatever they're doing. You know, there's so many options with that control. It makes it easy. The other thing with that control, again, with the antenna, the networking's built into it. So I don't know if anyone has any old networking stores where the worst case would be wired stores. You know, you had all these other components you had to add to your facility for networking, whereas this one we can go right directly to the network control. So that makes that easier. And that's my spiel for touch, but... Okay, cabinet washers. Now we're talking about something that's a little bit stronger. It can take on customers pretty good. Some of the obvious things, as we talked about before, is the doors. If, you know, people like to put clothes on the doors. They like to lean on the doors. So as you go through a few years of this, these are going to start sagging. And if you look at your door, basically there's a copper ring and there's a hole here. This is what we call our L catch. So when the door closes, this L catch rises it up, brings it up, and it's supposed to be perpendicular with the solenoid inside. I got a door lock in there, I think. Yeah. So, let's see, let me get my orientation. It would be like that, and that solenoid goes in. Basically, the shaft of that solenoid is going to go into this door handle, and that's door locked. Okay? So,
You can show the camera.
oh, I'm sorry. Forgot about the other one. Okay, so when they start sagging, the easiest way to know, you'll hear them. What you'll get is when you close this, you start the machine, you'll hear that clicking. And that's the solenoid. It basically gets a pulse, and it's trying to go into that hole, and you'll just hear it click because it's hitting the side or it's off somewhere. Basically, that's easy to fix. If you close this door, line it up, you can turn the power off the machine and manually lock the door, and then you want to loosen up the hinge so that you get it perpendicular again. Then you tighten the hinge back down and then open the door, and it should alleviate that. Now, if you had machines prior to 2007, you had a lot of this issue with the door locks and a lot of the clicking. The hinge is a lot stronger, and the L catch made a big difference. But again, customers can wear down those doors and hinges.
Is that the air that you get EDL one?
Yes, you can get an EDL. We're going to go for the 2 panels too, just so I can show where the door lock thing is. The errors can be EDL, or it might even say, depending on the machine, this one will say door lock. Okay, so there is a door open and a door lock error, and it could be ED1, ED2. It could say the actual door lock, door open. When you look at the door lock, basically when I close that door, we'll show you on this one. You'll see there's 2 rivets down here in the door. That's a magnet. And there's a magnetic switch right here in the bezel. Okay? And what happens is this lever pushes down. All right, so that magnetic switch and this bottom switch are my door close switch. Whereas everything was built into that one, we actually have the parts separate here. So when I close the door, it's looking for this switch and this switch to close. So if I get a door open error, or I think it's ED1, and then ED2 is door lock, then my problem is either in this switch or the magnetic switch. I can tell you the magnetic switch does not go bad that often. Again, I still only replace one. How about you? Yeah, you don't go a lot, but these are little micro switches and they can go bad. So once the door closes and it pushes that lever down, once you start the program, then as I told you before, this solenoid gets a pulse, which shoots out. Once it gets in the door, it's pushing this top switch. Okay? Once it sees that top switch close, that's telling it the door is locked. Okay? Probably the toughest thing is if somebody gets their clothes locked in the machine, you probably run into it, you turn off the power and it doesn't unlock. The only way you're going to get to it is you do have to take the front panel off. When he gets it off, you'll see there's a little cover that goes over this and there's a slot in that cover. You're just basically sticking a screwdriver in. That slot is lined up with this washer right here and you're just popping it back. Again, this does not have electricity on it. It gets a pulse, only a pulse. So a pulse it goes one way, pulse it comes back kind of thing. So it's easy to pop back, but the tough part is you got to take off the panel to get to it. You can pass that around. You almost there?
You got to take everything off to get to it, or just?
Yeah, that's the problem. Now, remember, with the door, if the door lock gets stuck and you can't get it to open, you have to take off the bottom access and that front panel. Most of you have the quantum control, something that changed on the front panel. If you get the touch, it is attached up top too. That's to get that clean look. We needed more support in holding the panel up and against the front. And Mickey hates it. Oh, you're up against this one there. Okay, yeah. So on a quantum, if you have a machine prior to what, mid 2018, you have one complete front panel. That has to come off. Let me get in there real quick. All right. This is what I'm talking about. You see the slot here. So that's where you'll see that washer when it's locked. And you have to pop it back. Probably 75% of the time, when you turn the power off and you give it enough time, it'll pop back. But there are times that you can't. And when you can't is there's water still in here. As long as there's power on that machine, if it knows there's water, it's not going to let you open that door. Okay? And that's why it won't unlock. So sometimes what you might have to do is if you still have water in there, which will bring us into the drain, basically the water valve and the drain kind of flow together in troubleshooting. But whenever we still have water inside here and it's supposed to drain, then you know that that's probably clogged up. Something stopping the water from getting out. Usually when a drain valve fails, it fails open. So if water's still in there, you know it's not a bad drain valve. You know something's blocking it. And if you have that condition at the end, it's not going to let you unlock the door. So what you're going to have to do is unclog the drain in order to get there. Now both the water valve and the drain can work together in the... if you get an error where basically if this starts to fill, it gives it approximately 15 minutes if it doesn't reach water level, you'll get an error. Now there's two things that could be happening there. So it would come up as a drain error or a fill error. So the first thing you have to figure out is, do you really have water coming in, or is the water coming in and the drain's not allowing it to stay in? That'll tell you which way you're going. If water's not coming in, then I'm going to go look at my water valve. If water's coming in but I don't see it filling up, then I'm going to go look at my drain. And what's nice is our newer drains basically have this seal. That's where, when the drain powered up, that's where it seals. There's 4 screws that hold it on there. It twists off and that can be replaced. This is where the brawl wires get stuck, and they cut slits into it, and what you're going to get there is, when you walk around your store, basically when this unit fills up, you shouldn't hear the water kick back on. But if you have valves that are leaking, then what you'll hear is it's in the wash cycle, like 5 minutes in, the water's kicking back on here and there. That just tells you you're losing water. So that tells you you have a leak there. And of course, with the Quantum software, and of course, the newer style controls touch, there are tests that you can run where it detects those and then the error will come up. Not everybody turns them on because it takes up some of your water and other things. The easiest way I tell is walking around the store. If I see the machines are being operated, I shouldn't hear the water kicking back on, because that's telling me we're having a leak problem. Usually when you have a leak, it's because that seal is damaged and water is getting by. Sometimes it can be something else obstructing the bevel piece from going into the seal. I mean, you can get all sorts of things in the drain, and as you get into 2-inch and 3-inch drains, you get a whole lot more stuff that's just stopping the water. So with a drain, you just need to figure out, is it the water not coming out or the water not staying in? Then it kind of tells you what you need to do there. With water valves, again, it works the same way. Is there water coming out or is there no water coming out? And of course, if there is water coming out, does it stop? It should reach its level. You got, the easiest time is actually in the morning when you first walk into the laundromat and you just listen. You shouldn't hear water flowing. If you hear water flowing, you got a valve leaking somewhere. Because it will basically, if it fails open, it's just going to keep flowing water and it's going to go right through to the drain. So you won't have any messes, but you can lose a lot of water. As I said, the Quantum control in this have leak detections, have filled, it can alert you. It keeps track of your fill times and your drain times, and after it skews so much, it can send you an alert. So if you're on a network type thing, there's things you can do to prevent those from happening. The water valves, again, it's very similar to this. It's a log valve. Let's say mid 2018, one of the biggest changes we did was we went to DC on some of our components. And there's a lot of reasons behind it, why, where one benefits and the other one. It had to do with being safer and the ability to, a lot of our output boards had DC already. And, so now we only have to do is feed the voltage to the output board and it creates all the DC that we need for the component. So it kind of separated out the power coming in by running it through the output board. But prior to this, we had 3-way valves. They were 24-volt AC. Worked the same way as far as for flushing the dish. The thing with the 3-way valves is the hoses were like there were 6 hoses. I mean, they were everywhere. We were able to clean it up with this and go directly into the dish. Everything about this valve is the same as the other 3-way valve, other than the coil's 24 volts, DC versus 24 volts AC. Inside the valve, so I had this one prepared. I still need my needle nose. All right, so when you pop these coils off, you can take, like I said, this one I kind of had broken already, so it was easier. You can take a screwdriver basically and tap that. You don't want to hit it too hard because again it's plastic to get this to start. Some people even use a wrench on the stem. The thing with that, you want to make sure you don't damage the stem. Again, that's a little bit harder than when you have a valve that's been in there for a year or so. But this is basically, on a repair kit, this is the most common thing we repair. And that's called the diaphragm. And what happens is, I mean, you know, across this country, water is different everywhere. You've got really hard water, you've got all sorts of water. And basically, water is going to break down the rubber after so much time. And this is where the fail comes. Every once in a while, you'll pull this open and the spring will be broken or the plunger's messed up. The replacement kits have those parts in them. Kind of pass that around. You can pull it apart. Don't feel bad if you lose anything. I can get another one. What's nice about these water valves is if one, let's say, just gets, you can't repair it, each one of these sections can be replaced. You don't have to buy the whole water valve. And that makes it a lot less as far as cost-wise. But the water valves on both machines work the same way. So diaphragm is probably your #1 thing. A lot of people just replace the whole valve out rather than waste time repairing. It's just whatever you like. You can probably find a benefit to either one.
That's a more just keep coming in your washer after it stops.
Yeah, why you use the diaphragm or repair the diaphragm is yes, when it fails, you're going to have, actually it could fail either way. A diaphragm, like I said, if it gets eaten up and it has kind of slits in it, you can have water flowing all the time. It can also stick sometimes to the coil part and basically you'll have water dribbling out. So a diaphragm can fail 2 ways.
It's just pouring out. You replace the whole water valve, or you just replace
the question is if it's pouring out, you can replace just the diaphragm to repair it. You got it, when you open it up, you might find that plunger or the spring are broken too. But whether it's pouring out or just dribbling out, it still goes back to that whole water valve. Any water valve you get goes down to that little rubber diaphragm.
So, when did y'all start making kits to repair them? Did they go back a long time?
Well, the fun thing about this, the kit for the inners is the same. It's the kit we had for the 3-way valve prior to that.
We only buy the valve, from my point. So, have you always had kits for these, or that's just been the last year or two that they have?
I think we've always had kits.
Yeah, diaphragm.
Diaphragms have always been out there. Like I said, some people, especially, I will tell you, if you're repairing a water valve 5 years old, it might be hard to get everything open. When you get it open, you might crack something or break something. So it gets harder to take that apart. So I can understand on an older machine just replacing the valve, because I will tell you this, the kits, if I was on your 3-way valves, if I bought 3 kits cost more than 1 valve. So If I'm repairing one coil, it makes sense. It makes sense. But if once you get into more than one on one of those valves, it's probably cheaper to replace the valve. And we usually tell you if you got one diaphragm bad in the valve, you're probably going to have more than one.
I know it depends on water quality, but how many years you think of?
Yeah.
It just depends.
That definitely, the question is water quality. How long does diaphragms last? They can last a long time. They can go out your first 6 months of having them. I mean, that's how it ranges. I've seen both happen. It just depends. We have a wide variety.
Hot water, probably the cold, isn't it?
What was funny is I think on the three-way valves, it was more hot waters. On this valve, I'm finding more on cold. So again, it doesn't follow something there. I can tell you, most stores will have the same, basically. If you run into repairing a bunch of cold water valves, you probably have the same in your store. And again, that goes to the makeup of the water. Everywhere is different. Every time I send in something for a sample on what happened to this valve, they give me a new chemical thing that I've never heard of that could be in the water. You know, we got a lot of different things they use to clean water. So like I said, it takes its effect on rubber. Okay, a little bit of history on the machine. So basically, in 2007, we went with what we call a press fit bearing. Prior to that, it was what we call a slip fit. So that basket, when you opened it up, it just slid right into the bearings and you used the nut to hold it in place. 2007, we went to where that shaft of that basket had to be pulled into the bearing case. Now that's where we were able to start now coming up with larger G-forces and less problems with bearings too. 2012, we went to like an A-frame, so the bearing housing was mounted to the A-frame. That's when we said, all right, so we're going back. Anybody, 10 years on the bearings, basically. That was after the A-frame, but we went all the way back to 2007 because I still had very few of those vintages fail.
What's your warranty on bearings now?
10 years.
When did that start?
If you have anything from, we started it in 2012, but it was retroactive to mid-2007. If you have,
2012 on, yeah.
if you have an SCN machine, it has 10 years basically. And again, with that, that's when we went to the A-frame, that's where they got up to 200 Gs. Now, the extra G-force, it extracts a lot of the water, which means less drying time and all that. But you definitely got to make sure you have the floor for it. Because I can tell you, if you put these machines on a floor that's no good, it's just going to rip out and cause a lot of other problems. So,
How big does the floor need to be?
depending on the size of the machine, it can be anywhere from 6 inches. I think the 80-pounder goes up to,
12, 19.
is it 12? I think it's 12.
You need 12 inches of concrete.
Yeah. On an 80-pounder and a 100-pounder, definitely. I'd have to double check a 60. It falls somewhere in between, I think.
I didn't know how thick your floor is.
Take a drill. Yep. That's usually what they'll do. If they're coming over to figure it out, you know, the easiest thing is you take a drill. It will tell you a lot of things there. You know, basically how thick it is, how soft it is. I had a location once. It was on the OPL side, and it was at a hotel, and they put it on this concrete that you could basically, I could take a pencil and chisel into it. It ripped out, and the only thing that saved the attendant from the thing falling on him was all the lines, and the hose lines kept that thing from falling over. But it ripped out of the floor, no problem. So it's just, if you have an existing, if it's a really old store, it's something you want to check into. You know, a lot of the newer stuff, if you're making a new store, I can tell you they probably There is no problem. I think the rating is what, 2,500 PSI or 3,000 on concrete? I forget. Yeah, it's somewhere in there. And like I said, if it's new construction, it's usually handled.
Because you pour it
Yeah, you're pouring it for that purpose. Whereas if you got it, the only time it becomes a problem is an old store where you're pulling out top loaders and stuff like that, and you're wanting to put cabinet washers in. You want to make sure that it's there.
So what do you do if it's not there?
There's in our installation manuals, we give you ideas on how to. You're basically going to build up the concrete for the machine. So whether you make the pedestal, like you want your 20s to sit up a little bit more, but you're going to dig in, you're going to basically redo the concrete for the machine, not the whole store. You're going to build that pad area for your machines.
You're not gonna put it on top there.
Yeah. It'll be cut out because you need to tie it in right, and that's all in our manual. We kind of go into depth about concrete because it's important on washers. The next thing is your drain. We always recommend a trough. It's the best thing because no matter how slow your main drain is, if you have a trough, the machines will drain. The water will go in there, and even if they're slow, at least it doesn't affect the machine. If you're in a closed system and you have a problem, basically, if it takes too long to drain, it will air out and you're not going to spin. All right, and that's where we talked earlier about if it does that, you're looking for a clog somewhere in your drain. The good thing about a trough, if I'm looking for a clog, I'm only looking for a clog from that drain valve to the back of the machine. So I'm only looking in a hose that big. It's pretty easy to find, and a lot of times I can clear everything from the front. I don't have to get to behind the machine. And like I said, troughs also give you that fudge space. If your drain isn't big enough to handle the machines you're putting in there, it's going into a trough, it's draining. Once the machine evacuates the water, it doesn't care. And that's the biggest thing, is to get the water out as quick as you can. I mean, we try and get the water in as quick and out as quick as we can, because that just saves time. A lot of times you'll look at your control and you'll see different, you'll say the times have changed, or these machines are different than that machine. And what it does is, one of the settings on there is you're using either program time or actual time. Actual time, after it runs so long, is going to see how long it takes to drain, how long it takes to fill, and it's going to add that to the machine because that's part of it. When I say 5 minutes of wash here, well, it gets 2 minutes to fill up with water, and then it does the 5-minute wash, So if it takes less time, that time will go down. If it takes longer, it'll go up. Oops. I selected language. So again, let's see, I was 2012, the A-frame, 200G machines. Basically, as you look at the mechanical side of this machine, design-wise, 2012 was the last big design change we did, and that was, like I said, we went to the A-frame. Build-wise, mechanically, there's not a whole lot of issues I deal with here. Probably the other thing we went to in 2012 was we went across the board with inverters. But what we did with our inverters is we had them make them for us. Basically, if anybody has any machines like with Allen Bradley's or Mitsubishi inverters in there, that inverter is made to do a million different things. I mean, if you ever go through a programming book, it's thick as can be, and it just does a million things. A washer was just using like a little fragment of it, but an inverter, an Allen Bradley, Mitsubishi that we're talking about, $1,800, $3,000. So we basically had them dumb it down. It does all the parameters we set in an inverter are in here, but it's made for washers. So it's made for our machine. That brought down the cost dramatically, to $300 for an inverter, so that was real important. All right. The thing that inverters bring to washers, number one, I want to say they're a lot quieter than contactors pulling in because they slam. You can hear contactors pulling in. The only thing you get with an inverter is sometimes you get an inverter noise, and it's really weird because it almost sounds like metal. Sometimes all it's a matter of where the motor is located. There's some isolator, some rubber there to prevent that from happening. When we first came out, we had a lot more of it, but we corrected that. But inverters allow us to do a soft start too. So basically what an inverter does, it doesn't like slam your motor into play. It brings up. So that's why it starts off slow kind of as it's going. It's a soft start. So that protects your motor and your bearings. So that allowed that life, that 10-year warranty to be easy because, you know, the soft start with the inverter, the press fit bearings, we also added 2 drip holes, so if any water gets by it doesn't get near the front bearing. So we went to these across the board, which if you look on this machine, we call it a motor control board, but you know, this one is an inverter because these the washers do a lot more stuff than the front load washer. We have a lot more control over it because we'll still have what we call an output board here in the center. The only thing that changed in 2018, like I said, we went to DC. So everything on here is DC other than the motor. That's it. Everything else is DC. The motor is the only thing AC on a washer now. If you have a 2007 model, we use 24-volt AC on all the components. Again, the other thing we changed in 2018 is that's one way you can tell. You know, what model you have is we broke the panel down into 2 panels. So if you have that SCN model, it's all 1 panel in the front. 2018, we added an access panel. The reason, you got 2 screws to take off, and if you look underneath, right there is the drain. Makes it easier to clean it out. It also gives you a little bit more room to put something under it, because whenever you have a clogged drain, water is going to go everywhere, so you got to account for where it's going to go. It uses the same water pressure sensor, electronic style. It's right in the front. Again, it's connected to the control. Electrically speaking. Now, one of the things we did come up with, and you know, the biggest thing on some machines is restarting a machine. People will just pull things off of the control and different things. Well, sometimes you can arc and mess up a control with that. On all the cabinet washers, we did add a little jumper. It's in the back here. Turn your touch off. It's right in the back. It's just a little jumper. That's a way of, if you need to restart power from the front, we understand it's hard to, you might not be able to get to the control panel to restart power. This is one way you can do it without having to worry about arcing the control. Cabinet washer wise, door lock, drain valve, water valves. Those are my main things. You guys got some questions on other parts or more detail on?
There's something stuck in a couple of our washers where it sounds like it's like in the pin. How do you get to that? Or do you just not worry about it?
Yeah, you the only way you can't get to it, basically. It's made its way around. It's in this fin. I guess there is some cutouts on the backside, but I mean that amount of work to pull a basket just to get rid of it is not something. I don't think you guys even hear that too often. So with the lifter, there is a hole in the back on the basket. If it hits just right, it goes by, and of course, goes down into the drain. If it's not, like I said, you would have to take the front off. And again, I told you it's press fit basket, so you'd have to pop the basket out to get to that area.
So don't worry about it.
I'd say that's not worth the expense. It's not going to damage anything where it's at, and eventually it will hit that hole and fall out. But it's not worth the work to do that. Any other questions on going once, going twice? Yeah, cabinet washers, like I said, they're pretty stout. You don't get a whole lot, but you have the same thing. Now we're going to go on the dryers next, but all three of these machines, they're totally different, but it's still the same thing. It's, as a store owner, you should be familiar with your water valves and your drain valves. You're going to save yourself a lot of money being able to deal with them rather than call somebody to deal with them, because they're not hard. Now, we will go back to drain valve on here. That's another one that's not DC anymore. I knew there was another part, I couldn't remember. That's still 220 or 120. So if you ever go to mess with these drain valves, you got to remember, turn the power off. Biggest reason on 220, you basically you still got a hot leg on that drain valve, so it can shock you. It's not like 120 where there's a neutral that won't shock you. On a 220 volt machine, if you touch that drain, you're going to get shocked. So always turn the power off. Not to mention you're getting shocked with water around you. It's just not a good idea. Always turn that power off. Drains, motors, any of that stuff. Anything where you're dealing with that line voltage, you want to be careful. All right, guys, any questions on washers? Any washers?
She was saying that one of our 100-pounders, the whole handle's loose. How do you tighten that?
So the handle's loose? All right, what would you... Is it the black handle?
Yeah.
It's a black handle, all right. So is it loose here? This is the first thing you want to check is right here, there's a pin.
The pin, yeah.
Make sure the pin didn't come out. I've seen it, or
Come all the way out.
if it's coming out, that means it's not doing what it should be. And you need another pin. Those are just a little cotter key pin. They don't cost anything.
Check them all the time. They'll come
Yeah.
out that far, we push them back in.
Yeah, but the thing is, if they're coming out, the weird thing about those cotter pins is we had them in batches where they would come out like that. Go to other stores, you can be there for 10 years, they never move. And I don't know if they just missed it by a little bit, but you got to understand when you get those, you got a big old box of 40,000 of them in a way to find one good one versus a bad one. So what we usually tell people in that case is if it starts to come out, replace it. Get replacements for it because it shouldn't come out. Is that where you're seeing it's mostly loose is there? You don't have anything here loose?
I didn't.
No.
I don't think I checked that. I just know the handle.
The handle, yeah. And then I tell you what happens. It's, this handle, you pull up on it, you push down on it. What happens is when you pull out that cotter key, you'll notice it's indented in two spots. It's the 2 points where it really holds that, and that's from people yanking on those doors, trying to open them. They started the machine, or what was originally with the quantum control, and this is going back a while. It would beep and say it was done before it unlocked the door. So we were getting a lot of that where people were yanking on it, and we understood because they heard the beep. Oh, it's done. Oh, we had to change that to make sure it unlocked and then beeped. But yeah, so the pins can wear in your door handles. Along with your door handles, you'll see this little copper piece. It lasts a long time. But if you ever have to replace that, again, We're talking these 3 screws hold this door handle on. This whole piece comes out and it can be replaced. Although, how many do you run into, Mickey? Not many, huh? Any other questions on washers? Anything? Cool.
You're gonna talk about this washer dryer combo?
Yeah, I was going to do the dryer, and then it would be easier just kind of, after the dryer's done, kind of put them together. We're going to go into tumblers. Okay? So with tumblers, you got one enemy. It's lint. If you keep this machine clean, and when I say clean, I mean just the airflow pattern. That is the most important part. Air comes in the back, comes through the machine. You know, anywhere where air is flowing, that is important. Now, you'll be in the manual, and they'll talk about, you know, pulling the panels and vacuuming all the lint around. You know, this lint is not stopping the airflow, so I don't care that much about it. I recommend it. It's a safe thing, but it's not going to preserve the machine. So the easiest and the most common is the lint screens, and of course we say to clean them daily, but you might have some stores that are busy. If you're cleaning these daily and they're filled, you might want to try and clean it a little bit more. As they get older, you might look at them and see these like patches where no lint is going. That's usually because of the fabric sheets. It's a waxy residue. It'll get on here and block them. So you can clean that off with warm water and a soft bristle brush to open that back up. If you start getting tears on these, you want to replace them because that just means air is getting by. And lint. If I let the lint get by here, now it's going to collect. Now it's going to collect on the blower fin. It's going to collect in my ducting, and that's going to cause more problems. So keeping it clean here is the first start. This new design is so much better than the other design. The other design, we had the big drawer. It went up against the felt thing, and of course, people tear at it. It tears off, and it would have all these gaps around there, and that's where basically, you know, you were losing efficiency because it's pulling air through there. This one, with it being enclosed and up against that rubber gasket, it's a lot tighter seal, so that helps us with keeping the airflow right. So with the dryer, the most important thing is air. All right, so we have to be able to pull air in and exhaust it out. So if you have a store and you go behind the dryers and there's no vents or anything to feed air, it's just sucking it through the front door, you won't have very efficient dryers. And you're going to have a lot of burning issues, a lot of heat issues, which will catch up to you. You also have a lot more lint that collects in your duct. They're designed to push air at a certain speed. That same speed is also designed to pull lint out. You know, if you slow it down, basically lint just kind of lays. If I go behind the door to where the tumblers are and it's just lint everywhere, it tells me they got some air issues. That's your first sign. If you're collecting a bunch of lint behind them, that means the air is not moving right. And that could also mean that you're pulling the exhaust air right back in. We talk about makeup air and exhaust. You know, if I have my exhaust running right where my makeup air is, it's just going to cycle right through and all that lint is being pulled back in. It's easy to correct any issues, but I can tell you right now, if you have a store that has a lot of heat issues, it's makeup air or ducting. That's your number one problem.
What do you mean heat issues?
Heat issues. Heat issues can be anywhere from it's not lighting, which means the dryer's cold, or you get the complaint that this takes me twice as long to dry as it used to. Those are heat issues I'm talking about. Matter of fact, heat is the biggest thing you'll talk about on a dryer. And when somebody says it's not working, that's where you have to ask more questions, because there's the two heats. One is no heat, meaning this is cold. It's not coming on at all. The second one is you feel the glass, it's still warm. But they're saying now, instead of, 15 minutes to dry, it's taking me 25 minutes to dry. And they've been using the same machines for a while, so they know. When you start hearing that, that's when you're looking at issues with makeup air or ducting. Now, you might have the best setup in the world, but it's, let's say, 5 years down the road and you don't annually get your ducting checked. Ducting will collect lint. Birds will build nests. I mean, you get all sorts of things in there. Some people, even though we tell them not to, put a screen on their ducting. They put it on there to collect the lint, but they don't realize they got to clean that all the time. It's not even worth having on there. It's the biggest thing you fight with, but I can tell you, I know some people that have great setups and they are always back there. They clean the backs. They keep their lint screens clean, and you can make these. I've walked into some stores that had 10, 15-year-old machines, and you would think they were new because they kept them that well.
Let me ask you a question. When you say cleaning the back, what are you talking about?
Just vacuuming. I'm talking about vacuuming on the back. Question was, when we clean in the rear of the machine, the main thing we're doing there is just vacuum.
You're talking about the stuff that's laying on the back of the machine?
Back of the machine. Just yeah, you don't want stuff collecting on your motors, because when lint and stuff collects on your motors, basically that just keeps heat in the motor. All right? Because these motors use heat sinks and different things to get the heat out. But if you cover all that, the windings will break down quicker from the heat. So that's just the easiest thing on the back, is vacuuming off. Now the thing is, if you go in back behind your dryers and you see a lot of lint, well then you know you have an issue you want to address, and you want to track it back down. Like there's probably the next, we talked about the fabric softener sheets. If you ever go in your store and you look in the back there and at all that baked stuff on there, again, that's our thankful fabric softener sheets. Like I said, it is a waxy residue that comes off. The biggest thing is you can use oven cleaner to clean that off, heat up the thing, use oven cleaner. Just make sure when you're done, you wipe it down really well. That's probably like, yep, that burnt stuff on there. Treat it with oven cleaner.
You talking about like Easy Off or whatever it is?
Yep.
Okay.
Just follow. You're going to heat up the machine just like you would heat up your oven. Spray it down. When it's done and cooled off enough, you wipe it off. You clean it up. The only thing I tell them is that after you let it set for a little bit, wipe it down again, just to make sure you got it all out of there. It's a lot of maintenance to keep it from happening, but it will continue to happen, just so you know. Real quick, some safeties. If you have the older dryers, the only thing I'd like to make you aware of is you have 3 fuses in the back of the machine. You know, if this control is totally blank, go check those fuses. Okay? If you try and start the machine and it gives you a door lock or door error, just double check those fuses. Because there's 3 fuses on the older ones. Now, the new style, you don't have that issue. Only fuses here are on the board, on the output board. The next biggest thing we want to get to real quick, because we're going into a break here. Rollers. They're mounted here and here. They're set up where you can get a ratchet in there and take it off and slide it out of the front. You want to keep track of your rollers. If you start hearing a rumbling noise, that usually means this is bad, and you want to replace them. had a lot of different colors, which means a lot of different compositions, different bearings, because we're always trying to find the perfect roller, and I don't think we ever will. But the biggest thing is to keep your ear out. When you start hearing that rumble, you want to check those. And you can easily, when you pull out the lint drawer, you can feel where the rollers are. If you feel it's rough, replace them both. Don't just replace one, because I'll guarantee you're going to have the other one go bad soon. Do not buy these off-market ones. I'm going to guarantee you, you're going to get, maybe 5-6 months out of them, and they're going to go. That's another one that you can find real cheap, but you're going to get real cheap if you buy those. If you let that go too long, too much rumbling, or like with the cheaper ones, it will just rip that whole rubber thing off. And if this runs like that, what you're going to kill next is the bearing. You could break the shaft on the tub. Then you're talking about major repairs versus little repairs.
I see also if you run with bad rollers, the front of the basket will start wearing out and the front will come off of it because there's like a little twine around there wear out and the front will pop off that basket and cause problems too.
Yes. If the rollers wear, basically what it's going to cost, it's basically held, this is held in place by 2 rollers and a bearing in the back. It's not a heavy duty bearing because all the weight is here. So if it goes bad, it starts moving too much, which is going to basically make the bearing fail. Where are we at? Got 2 minutes. Any questions on tumblers? I'm sorry I went through that kind of fast.
I got one question that's probably off base, but we adjusted our hinges, and right there, right above where your hand is, just a little bit in the side, there's a noise.
It's scraping in here? Yeah. You want to double check. Actually, that just means you might have pulled this in too far. So what that is basically the basket's scraping that front panel, and it might have pulled it in too far.
But it only happens when there's weight in there.
Weight and probably heat, because metals expand, and that's usually whenever you hear that, that's just a scrape, and that just means it got pulled into. Yeah, and it makes a lot, but it's really.
What do we adjust? The screw?
Yeah, the screw that went through the hinge.
Yeah. Back it up.
Back it up, and you might have to just bring it in slower.
Okay.
In the back.
I have the older style dryers, like 15-year-old dryers.
Yeah.
A lot of times when we dry white comforters, we get rub off. Where's that rub off coming from?
Rub off on white comforters?
White comforters. Where's that coming from?
On this dryer, the only place I'm getting any type of rub off would be on the, and it really shouldn't. I don't see it. I mean, even though that fabric softener stuff looks terrible, I don't get rub off of it. Well, yeah, I guess if it's overloading, well, no, there's 2 things. Now you got me on the right line. All right, yeah, if you're overloading, it can get it from the gasket. But also, if you look at your tumblers are usually kind of they should have a little tilt back versus being tilting forward. Because we don't, even if I sit here, if I put a regular load in here, if this is tilted forward, it's going to ride on this door. And you don't want it to ever ride on that door. It could be picking up.
The door is the comforter's wet, it's this big, and then as it dries, it gets bigger, and it pushes against that door.
Yep, that's where you put your level in the basket from front to back. You want to make sure that is not level or leaning towards the front. You want a little tilt on it. That will take off so much pressure off of the front door. Even though it expands, you're taking a whole lot more pressure off if you have a little tilt in it. Well, yeah, if the worn rollers will do it, but that's pretty, like I said, easy. You'll hear that rumbling when they start to.
So another thing with the fins on this, it sounds like there's
same thing
stuck in these fins, and when we were trying to figure out, like running our hand under, when we pull the lint screen out, there's holes in the bottom of those fins that were filled with lint.
Yes.
So that's a PM thing that we should be doing too?
Yeah, all right, the question was about lint, where she found lint in the basket, and they do have in our annually taking panels off, and I think this is something you guys offer. Do you guys do the PM maintenance?
We don't allow to take all the panels
Uh.
clean and dry.
In the PM, it does tell you about opening this up, and when you would open that up, you would have more access to that basket and cleaning it up.
Well, where those fins run back and forth, about halfway there's a hole in that fin.
Yeah.
And it gets full of lint.
Yeah, lint will go everywhere, just so you know. Yeah, and the worst is if you get too much around your rollers, it can stop the rollers from moving, which will cause them to fail. Another thing about the rollers, if you ever replace them and they go bad real quickly, that shaft that the roller sits on can be replaced. I guarantee you it's bent a little. The element's there? All right. Anything else on tumblers? We will be here while they switch up. If you guys have any questions or you want to see something a little closer, come on up. Anyone interested? This is the washer dryer combos. What do they got? 45 and what are the 35 and 55, I think. Which I'm going to tell you is that washer and one of these units on it. There's nothing different about it. It is exactly that. That dryer popped on there. On a 55 we use, or on the 35 we use this 30-pound, and then we use a 45-pounder. So if you have a 45-pound tumblers, that's what's right here.
Do you only see those installed on the outside walls, or do you ever see those on the center back to back? I guess you'd have to have 6 of these back to each other so that, I don't know.
The only concern I had against the outside wall was somebody who had to have the thing opening for the dryers. He was worried about the cold air and the water piping. That's the only question I've ever had as far as install. Everything else has been in like a basement and
But they're usually,
different.
are they usually
That-
put on the perimeter like you would dryers?
That's where I've seen them so far. Is they have their dryers and then these will be in there.